Hey everyone, and welcome to the Doge that reads D&D Horror Stories and stuff. In today's episode, we have quite a few stories that are all on the shorter side, that have all sorts of flavors of tabletop RPG cringe. Think of it like an ice cream truck with varying flavors of that guys and murder hobos, if you will. But before we get into it, if you enjoy the videos and aren't subscribed yet, why not? It helps out the channel and makes Ziggy really happy.
Sí, suscríbete. O ahora en una.
So subscribe today. But with that said, let's hop right into this grab bag of D&D cringe. Never accept a stained character sheet. By Reddit user RivetGeek. Most of my horror stories are from con games. The one that sticks out was a Palladium FRP game that I signed up for. The GM passed out character sheets, and they were slightly used would be an understatement. They were obviously somebody's characters, and most were stained. It was made very clear that we were to return these sheets at the end of the game. It was also communicated that we were playing characters from an ongoing campaign, so they literally were other people's characters. The character I was handed was a middle-aged druidess, and I guess the healer and den mother of the group. I was like, okay, I can handle this. Then it became apparent that she was involved romantically with a DMPC, and I was expected to act accordingly. Things got pretty weird, since the GM was having the DMPC say things like, "You seem different, what's wrong?" and role-playing them getting upset when I didn't respond in whatever way they were expecting, or take cues for how I should. There were attempts at in-character PDA, and I was not comfortable with it. After a little bit, I pretty much tapped the non-existent watch on my wrist and said, "Oh, look at the time," and bugged out. I think I sought out the hotel bar. As an aside, something similar with stained-up ratty sheets happened at a con during a Champions game as well, and the GM wanted those back too. I get that even in the mid-80s to early 90s, it wasn't easy to just print up fresh copies of these things, but that's just nasty. Edit. Just to clarify something, the sheets weren't being reused for the convention game. They were the sheets from GM's home game, and we were playing characters that belonged to his players. Yeah, that is unsanitary to say the least. Also, why would a DM use characters that are in a running home game for a bunch of strangers at a convention? Was he really expecting people to continue an ongoing story that they knew nothing about? Did the home players know that their characters are being played by strangers? Would what happened at the convention be canon when he went back home? There are so many questions, but the answers are all probably stupid. So let's not think about it too much, and move on. Sorry for Killing the Enemy, by Reddit user TheForeverDMD20. I was playing in a group with only one other player for a one-shot our DM wanted to try in a new setting they made. I knew both the other player and the DM had been somewhat problematic to have in my past games, but being a forever DM, I jumped at the chance to play. I was playing a druid shifter who worked in exchange for the town's mayor to not cut down my tree friend, and the other player's character was a Shadar Kai rogue, who was a mercenary that tried to one-up all the other mercenaries in town. The game went alright for the first few minutes, as the rogue was listening in on talk of a mystery monster that had been roaming the outskirts of town. But it soon started going downhill when he ignored everything the DM had said and decided to go cut down my tree, even though he had zero reason to, and our characters had hardly ever met each other. The DM seemed frustrated, but decided to let him go anyways, for the sake of our characters meeting up sooner. As his character approached where my character was, sitting in the middle of the forest getting drunk with his tree, he had us roll initiative as the mystery monster attacked us from the trees, a cockatrice. The rogue just ignored it and kept preparing himself to chop down my character's tree, while me and Big Bird had a pretty quick showdown that ended with it dying in 3 turns to the power of snakes. The DM was obviously pissed off by this, and just straight up told us that an adult black dragon had landed in front of us. After explaining to the DM that as a party of 2 level 5 adventurers, that we will die no matter what, and he eventually retracted the big evil fuck you dragon. As my character was oblivious to the rogue looking for my tree not too far from me, I decided to try and advance the plot and search the cockatrice's body for any information. This is really the part where I realized that the DM really wanted to win the game and not run it. The DM smirked and told me, "Well, since it's a reptile, it has a reflex to bite you after death," and had it make an attack roll against me, which hit. I failed my save and was petrified against the bite of the cockatrice. Luckily, the petrification only lasts until you make the save at the end of each of your turns, which the DM seemed somewhat unsatisfied with. The rest of the game was pretty much just the DM railroading us towards a hag fight, celebrating every time we took damage or failed to do something, and getting mad every time we heard it or tried to do anything creative. After surprisingly winning the fight, at least he wasn't totally unfair, we met one of his world's gods, who asked us to free the rest of the gods from some other monsters. I was pretty done with this game at this point, and declined its request, since we had literally no reason to, and also knowing the DM would make us do it anyways. Sorry if this was more just me complaining than telling a story. I probably should have realized that I wouldn't have enjoyed playing with this group when I found out that it was just specifically them running this game. This was pretty much just me experiencing my share of no D&D is better than bad D&D. Honestly, I would say that this whole thing sounded like a heap. First the rogue, ignoring what the DM was laying out in front of them, all in order to go murder hobo on a tree that his character would know nothing about, to the point of ignoring a cockatrice. And then the DM, playing like he's trying to win at D&D against the players. Though, I would say that OP isn't completely blameless either. He stated that it was a one-shot, and while I can understand complaining about railroading in long campaigns, some railroading is required in a game that is only going to be for one session. So yeah, those are just my thoughts. What do y'all think? On to the next one. Rock of Love, but Make It Disney, by Reddit user Cherry Joy. I've been with this group for a while, having met one of the founding members through a high school gym class. We started off using Werewolf Johanna as our main source material, but by college, we were feeling a little bit burnt out. Some in the group suggested that we try to make our own game out of another type of existing media. After days of brainstorming and bickering, we ended up agreeing to let our GM's brother make their own world for us to use after they promised to include a little bit of everything that we'd ask for. I won't lie, we had requests all over the place. I imagined it would need to be something akin to Underhill to hit all the beats that we'd asked for. For a while, we could see that they were hard at work. Days would go by with them messaging in our group text with images or links about something cool that they were researching for the world. Despite our hesitations, we all started to get excited, until about the second week, when they stopped messaging us. We would text them privately to ask or show interest, and they would blow us off. We started thinking that they had just lost interest, and then our bi-monthly meetup came. He was there with his laptop, game face on, looking ready to go. Now, our group had a decent mix at that point. When we started, I was the only girl, but by this point, there were 9 of us total. 10 if you count the GM's brother, and 6 of us were ladies. We all sit down, ready to hear about this world he's made in 2 weeks that's supposedly going to feature everything from Atlantis to Middle-earth, from Agrabah to Narnia. He opens his computer and turns it around to a YouTube trailer for a Disney video game. When it's over, he turns it back around and pulls up a tab for a dozen pre-made character sheets that are all just, I don't know how else to describe them beyond maybe yassified Disney princesses. For the guys in the group, they were also given pre-made character sheets. My high school friend was one of the ugly stepsisters, our usual GM was Ursula, and lastly, the third guy in our group was an anthropomorphic Scar, as a eunuch. I suspect GM's brother went particularly hard at that guy because he was maybe a little more conventionally attractive. so it wasn't uncommon for girls in our group to flirt with him if they were new. Probably the best part about this was that GM's brother announced their character was Prince Charming, whose mother was the evil queen from Sleeping Beauty, so he could turn into a dragon, thus explaining the harem. Though he would say, "It's not a harem, guys, it's just what he hoards, because he's a dragon." As if all of that wasn't enough, he further sets up the story for us, saying that we're all part of his horde, but as a dragon, he gets hungry, so it's up to us to convince his character not to eat us, by any means necessary. If we don't, he's bigger and will just take what he wants, eating our characters after. He even has a pre-written scene to set the story in which his dragon guy does that, in graphic detail, to an aged-up Alice. While he's reading this aloud for us, he links each of us to our designated character sheet via Google Docs. I got Pocahontas. Why? Because you're Indian. No, I'm actually not. I just very calmly got up, told them that it wasn't for me, and left. Thankfully, this is the craziest RPG story I have. I heard he bitched about everyone refusing to give it a shot, but by our next meeting, he was back to being a sporadic member of our group. He never brought it up again, and we switched to Changeling Dreaming after that. TLDR, we gave our GM sibling a shot at running his own game. He tries to force us to all play members of his harem, or risk being assaulted and then eaten. Well, that certainly was creative? Yeah, let's go with that. Honestly, it just sounded like this GM was a bit too much into Disney, and also mixed it with stuff that honestly are probably fetishes of his. Which, if that's the case, I'm not here to kink shame, but maybe don't spring it on people just trying to play a tabletop RPG. And I can only imagine the images that are going to pop up when I'm looking for stuff to use in this video's thumbnail. I bet my FBI guy is really confused by this point. On to the next. DM forces my character to get pregnant. By Reddit user Orla Barbarian. I, a female player, was in a great D&D game for almost a year when a new player joined. He and the DM thought it would be funny to get an RPG book on bedroom relation scenarios. That same day, they had his character hit on mine, and the DM basically took over my character, making her do things that were totally inappropriate. After about 10 minutes of the two of them laughing and rolling out of this book, they proclaimed that my character was now pregnant. Needless to say, I stopped attending the group. Damn, that really sucks. Being in a game for close to a year, only for the DM to reveal themselves as that kind of person. Taking away control of OP's character just to do that, as a joke or not, is super messed up. And OP later posted in the comments that the group was great for months, but thinks that this new guy twisted DM's mind. But honestly, the potential was probably always there for that DM to do something like that, and he probably just needed a little nudge. I don't blame OP for leaving, and hopefully she can find a new game soon. And by the looks of it, we're about to find out because OP posted another story. I almost got into a fist fight with another player. By Reddit user Orla Barbarian. So, I was playing in a game with my husband for about 2 years. The gaming shop let us play there for free, only if we let any walk-ins join. Big mistake. This new guy joined our group maybe 2 months ago, and he was terrible. He was a complete jerk, and not a nice person in general. He would metagame, try to take all the good stuff, and just say mean things. At this point, he never did anything that justified us being able to kick him out, so we just had to put up with his crap. Well, one day, we had car issues, and my husband had to take the city bus to the game shop, and I would just drive there after work. I was against it because it was a massive city, and they are known for not having the safest transportation system, but he told me that he would be okay. He was supposed to get there before me by over an hour, but when I showed up, he was not there. 30 minutes later, all the other players are there, and we are waiting around for my husband. After an hour, I got really nervous. I tried calling him many times, but could not get through, and this hardly ever happens. I am now scared that something may have happened. Everyone is trying to calm me down and help out. But this terrible new guy came up to me and said in a nasty and almost hopeful voice, "Maybe he got stabbed." I swear he was trying not to smile. That was it. This was the last straw with this guy. I began to walk up to him with my fist clenched. He was seconds away from knowing why this 5'2" woman likes to play barbarians. If it was not for all the other amazing guys in my group grabbing me and practically dragging me out of the shop, he would have been in a world of hurt. 15 minutes later, my husband arrived, safe. Almost 3 hours late though. His bus was very much delayed, and his phone was out of battery. After that, our DM killed his character, and he never came back. Well, first of all, I think that the rule that anyone playing in a game shop is required to let anyone just walk in and join is the first problem. That just allows any creep to come in and join a game, much like what happened here. This guy just sounded like a dickhead, and I almost wished that the other players didn't stop OP. Taking joy in the worry of others is really messed up. Though, thankfully, they were able to get rid of this guy, and Orla Barbarian was finally able to find a decent game to play in, even though it had a rough start. And before we get into the final story, if you are enjoying the video, consider giving it a like, as it helps out the channel more than you might think. And speaking of liking things...
Yes, like the video. I like people who like the video.
So, be like Nipsey and like the video. Let's move on. DM killed my character in a cutscene. By Reddit user Jake the Goldfish. My friends and I have been playing a 5e campaign for about 1 year together. I created a character for this campaign where I fleshed out his personality more thoroughly than I had with any previous characters. He got developed over the course of the story, and the other players responded well to him. My wife and I learned that we were expecting a baby, not our first, and I told the group that I would need to take a break from the game after the baby was born for the adjustment period. A couple weeks later, the DM sends me a text stating that he's considering killing off my character in an upcoming session. I responded, asking that my character not be killed off, and suggested he spend time at his god's temple or something, but I never got a response. Fast forward a couple months. It's 1 month from the due date, and our session is a big, siege-type attack. We play for several hours until the city is taken. Once the battle is ended, the DM introduces a brand new BBEG who appears suddenly right next to my character. The DM makes a dice roll behind the screen, never clarifying why they are rolling, and announces that the BBEG just killed my character. No damage announced, just that my character was immediately dead. The DM declared to the group that he had planned this with me. The group was shocked, and I didn't want to kill the momentum with an argument, so I didn't speak up. The more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. I talked with another player and showed the text exchange. This validated my frustration. It's been 3 months since the birth of a healthy daughter. We've started a Starfinder campaign with the same DM, but his poor communication is really hampering my enjoyment. Other issues are also present: railroading the story, little or no description of locations, blaming players for any misunderstandings of the world, outright refusal to have a session 0, etc. I'm thinking of leaving the game altogether. Yeah, that is pretty messed up of that DM to do that. He could have totally just had OP's character be off doing something else until they were ready to come back, but just decided to kill him off anyways, even when he stated that he didn't much like the idea. Then it sounds like he justified it to the other players by saying that OP agreed to it when he obviously didn't. It's almost like he was punishing OP for having a kid, which is super messed up. And by the sounds of things, the Starfinder game isn't that much fun either, and just causing more stress. If that's the case, I would tell OP to just leave, and let DM know the reason. Why play a game if it's not fun and just causes more stress? Those are just my thoughts though. What do y'all think? If you have a story that you would like to be shared, be sure to post it in the d&Ddoge subreddit, or even hit me up on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and thanks for watching.